Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Seeing Ability podcast, where we're having a conversation about the world of people with disabilities. And it means we're going to be talking to a variety of folks. Sometimes it's adults who have been that kid growing up with a disability and now they're in adulthood. Sometimes it's parents raising kids. Sometimes it's people who support this community. So it might be folks in healthcare, folks in education, or folks in a variety of pretty amazing nonprofits. Now, if you're a listener of mine, you know I'm a nonprofit guy at heart. And so once a month, I am doing a nonprofit spotlight, and that's what we have today. So I think you're going to be excited. You'll meet my guests in a moment. We've got two guests from a wonderful organization right here in my hometown. They're going to tell you a little bit about their insights on this journey as well as their costs. So sit back. We know you've got a lot of choices when it comes to what you listen to. So first of all, thanks for tuning in to our podcast and being with us here today. So Amanda, David, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So we want to start off, we're talking about the world, this journey, this path, often unexpected path of disability, but we're all just people. And so I always like to start off with the Fast Four. Now, the Fast Four is brought to us by my friends at Reliable Tech Help. So don't forget, if you've got tech needs, call them at 502-797-7399. 4 questions. We'll go one at a time for your answers about you guys. Number one, what's your favorite food? We'll go Amanda.
Pizza, always pizza.
Always pizza. She says that there no hesitation there.
No,
David, how about
I
you?
don't.
Barbecue.
Pizza and barbecue. Okay, very good. Music that we would find on your playlist. David?
Mostly 80s music is what I grew up with.
I like it. Amanda?
Classic country.
Classic country. Quite a divergence there. I like it.
Yeah.
Let's go with what about you can choose either one. There's no judgment on this podcast. A guilty pleasure streaming show or a favorite book you've been reading. Amanda?
Oh gosh, streaming show. So I watch crime shows, crime documentaries usually, but I do sometimes tune into RuPaul's Drag Race occasionally, only because my roommate watches it and I get stuck watching it. But yeah,
There's no disclaimers needed. It's okay if you watch it too.
I have to disclaimer that one, but okay.
Okay, David, how about you?
Oh, I like the real family-friendly Peaky Blinders.
Oh, there you go. That's hardcore. And last but not least, let's talk vacation getaways, either your favorite place to go or someplace on your bucket list that you've not been. First with David.
Key West. I've gone, I think, before COVID, 22 years in a row, and then 3 years subsequently. So we go to Key West every year and love it. So can't get enough
Fantastic.
Key West.
All right. Amanda, how about you?
We go to Emerald Isle, North Carolina every year, and they are very accessible. Just to throw that out there, super accessible. They have a beach wheelchair program and everything. So,
Oh, wow. Maybe I have to get them on the podcast and talk about
yeah,
what they're doing. That's great. I'm always looking for new angles to cover. And anytime I hear of an inclusive employer or especially an accessible vacation spot. So guys, if you're connected with them, reach out to the show. Let's get those folks on the podcast. Before we dive into questions about the journey, Amanda, why don't you tell the listeners who don't know anything about your nonprofit a little bit about you guys, your role, how you came to be involved with it, and then why you invited David to be with us today as well.
awesome. Yeah. So, our center is the Center for Accessible Living. We're an independent living disability rights and resource center. A lot of people hear that and they think residential. We're not residential. We connect the services to the people, the things they need to remain independent in their home or to become independent, more independent. However, we do all that. I started out as just a program coordinator working remotely in 2015, and then I stayed that way for a long time, and then I became assistant director, and then now I'm executive director. So I have a lot of big dreams, and I drive everyone at work a little crazy with that. But
We need
David,
people. We need people with big dreams at the helms of nonprofits.
oh,
No good deed goes unpunished, and you're now the chief cook and bottle washer. So that's
yeah.
exciting. And then tell us about David.
David has been here, I don't know how long, right? He's been here forever. And he's way more knowledgeable than me on a lot of topics, honestly. And I go to him, he's my go-to guy for a lot of things. So, and he's a great advocate. So I wanted to have him with me because he's very knowledgeable.
Now, David, you've been there forever, but you started when you were like 10. Is that right?
I think she's trying to say that I'm old, but I have
Yeah, a little.
been there, I think, for 22 or 23 years. So
So tell us, how did you get started in this work? Tell us the types of roles you've had and like what makes you the most passionate about it.
Well, I got involved after graduating from college with a master's degree, and I think experienced some subtle discrimination in employment before the ADA, and got tired of sitting at home with a master's, so started volunteering as a board member at the Center for Accessible Living, and then transitioned into part-time employment because I didn't want to impact my benefits, because a lot of people are weary of losing their benefits because we have a lot of costly medical expenses. So transitioned to part-time employment, and then found out about government programs that enabled me to work full-time and still keep my Medicaid. But then I got married, totally lost it. But you know, it was just a passion for advocacy and really helping people with disabilities. I've saw the people that went before me that made my life a lot better. So I wanted to try to accomplish something and try to improve the quality of life for people with disabilities in any way that I could.
Fantastic. Now tell folks who've never met you, again, you're not only doing this work, but you're living this life. What's your backstory that got you into this world of disability?
Well, at the age of 16, some friends and I were horsing around in a 4 foot above ground pool, throwing each other in, and I flung them, and when they flung me, I hit my chin on the bottom of the pool, and that resulted in a C5-6 quadriplegic. So I've been using a power wheelchair since 1982. So for 42 years, I've been a person with a disability. So for 16 years of my life, I, you know, was non-disabled and played football, ran track at St. High School, and then a fraction of a second that changed, and I've been a person with a disability for the last 42 years.
And how does it affect or impact your ability to do the work you do because you experienced it firsthand? What do you think that helps you bring to the table?
Well, I think a firsthand experience and knowledge of the programs and issues and things that we deal with are priceless. Legislators, decision makers who actually see people who have lived that experience and walked the talk and rode the road have a much more, I think, the ear of those politicians and decision makers to really make an impact, to say this is really what affects us in the disability community, and this is what we think would be good, or this could be potentially bad for our population.
Yeah, I would imagine it helps you really relate on a faster level than some program staff would to your clients you serve, because there's a mutual respect of like you said, you're in those shoes.
That is correct. So it is a opportunity to express some true life situations that they may not experience with other individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. So Amanda, for those who are again just learning about you guys for the first time, what's the age range of folks that you serve with in your work?
Cradle to grave is what they typically say. So as soon as they're born until they pass away, we take care of them. We serve them any way we can. And I can go into more of our services later, but we have a lot. We do a lot of independent living skills and things like that, teaching people and advocacy work, all kinds of things. So it's
Yeah,
exciting.
and we'll definitely get to some of those specifics and some of the things you've got going on right at this moment. So I want to talk to you guys. We talked before about a couple of topics to focus on, and one of those was, sometimes I call it expectations, sometimes I call it setting the bar. You know, a lot of our listeners are parents trying to find that right balance for any parent. How do you resist help swooping in and helping your kids so much that they're going to learn dependence versus letting them do things on their own? That's a struggle, finding that right balance for any parent. But then you throw in a kid who is on a different path. Maybe they're in a wheelchair, maybe they have a learning disability, whatever it is, and people are tempted to maybe like act a little differently. What would be both your insights, your observations along your own path of like finding that balance? And then what advice would you give to parents on helping their kids? Because again, the goal, you guys work with a lot of people, the goal is always independence.
Yeah. And I think independence looks different for everyone. So I think, one person's independence is going to be different than another's. And I think recognizing that and understanding that is going to be key at how you set your expectations. I know it's difficult. I raised my two nephews, and it's really hard for me because I want to set really high expectations. And sometimes I got to remember they're only 6 and 12. but but it's really difficult for me. So and neither of them have a disability, so I can only imagine if they did, how I would be probably even worse. I don't know, because I want them to be independent advocates. I want them to do that. So
Right. So you might err on the side of like really pushing them for more independence versus that helicopter parent that like wants to do everything for them.
oh yeah, I'm not a helicopter parent, and I probably would not be. So, yeah.
So David, in the folks that you have seen your own path, and then the folks you've seen on this journey, what advice would you give to parents on like they've got a 6, 8, 9 year old, helping them learn to be as independent as possible and balancing when they help and when they hold back.
Again, as Amanda stressed it, everyone is different. So everyone's familiar situation can be different, but for the most part, I would encourage parents to allow kids to explore and experience uh, and it's okay to fail for
Mm,
everyone, even if you have a disability. Failure is a learning experience. So, but if you be too protective and not let the child experience some of the situations that every other, whether non-disabled or disabled child might experience, and I think you could be doing something detrimental potentially to that experience for that child to be able to grow up. I mean, it's already challenging enough having a disability, whatever it might be, and then you add the preconceived notion that you can't do this or you can't. There's a lot of can'ts instead of cans, and that
mhm.
could be really a challenge for that child as well to develop and grow and other things. I mean, there are going to be some challenging situations if you don't have a disability, but then you add a disability upon that, it's going to be tough. But you can't be again a helicopter parent. That's not going to enable the parent, the child, to learn and experience and grow like his non-disabled peers. And again, we are the largest minority in America, but still we're a minority that we need to be able to learn to interact and grow and play and fail and all the other things, just like our non-disabled peers.
Yeah, I think that's well said. This idea of letting them fail, which is true for any parent, but I think, the tendency might be if you see a kid who on a regular day-to-day basis is facing struggles, you might be like, oh, we don't want him to see him fail one more time. I'll just chip in. But the irony is by jumping in or swooping in and doing stuff, you're robbing them of that part of life that we all have to learn from, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's part of discovering who you are too, is the failure, like David said. I think that's important. So
And you mentioned a lot of can'ts instead of cans. What about the dynamic you might have seen, or what advice would you give as far as like, what we think is possible for kids in terms of expectations? Just like, what's the ceiling, what's the floor? Probably some people unintentionally put limits on what a kid might be able to do a little bit more if they are facing a disability than they might a typically abled kid. Have you seen any of that? And what advice would you give for parents on like what's possible for your kid?
Well, personally, I think just with technology today, the compared to 1982 when I became disabled, and the technology that has just made leaps and bounds in the ability that it enables children and young adults with disabilities to accomplish is amazing. Uh, you know, the the voice recognition programs, uh, being able to control the computer with the voice. I mean, just it's amazing what chairs can do now. Power wheelchairs, elevate, recline. It's just what you can accomplish now is amazing, and the opportunities that are out there. And then I think just the fact that in school, instead of being in segregated classes only with people with disabilities, now we're integrated. And that
Mhm.
really is a big opportunity for, I think, kids to be able to experience and prosper and grow. Because unlike when I was in school, uh, younger kids are used to being around people with disabilities now because we're in
Right.
an inclusive environment and it's not, they don't stare at you or, I mean, there still is some of those issues, but for the vast majority part, I think things have improved immensely because of the integrated school system and all things like that. So, and then if you have a kid that's maybe prospering in that thing and then they go home and that's some there's some retraction and some other things where they don't have that opportunity, then I think it's a mixed message. And what do they really get out of that? It's a mixed message, and do they do this or do they do that? So I just think it's a challenging, and it's a balancing act. And I'm not a parent of a kid with a disability or a parent of anyone. So
Right.
this is me speaking from just some personal experiences as someone growing up for the last 42 years with a disability.
Absolutely. And you guys have probably both had experiences where you've seen people achieve things that probably maybe themselves at times or people around them thought they wouldn't be able to do, but they've done it anyway.
Oh, well, we see it every day, I think. Here at Cal, we see that a lot, especially because we teach independent living skills. We have people that volunteer here. We have people are that are consumers and then they start volunteering or anything like that, where, a year ago they couldn't do anything that they're doing now. And it's really amazing and heartwarming to see, honestly. So a lot of we had a volunteer at one point that was up front at our reception desk, and then he went off because he found a full-time job. So it's great. And we were just getting him ready. He just wanted the experience of working at a desk. So
And when he came to us, he was very quiet, very shy, very retiring, and I think kind of relying upon his mother quite a bit. And then after a year of being around people with disabilities and cutting up and joking and giving them some duties and responsibilities, he flourished, and again is now on to hopefully a career for him that will enable him to be a self, determined individual.
Yeah. So that idea of people doing more than either in some cases they themselves thought, or especially the people around them, that's like a daily thing for you guys. That's the whole reason you're around, right? Is breaking those barriers of what's possible.
Yes, I love it. I love seeing it every day. It's it's awesome. And I think for sure the people, because we do have some people that come in with their parents, and I think their parents, um, they come in and sometimes they're a little against some of the independent living skills that we're going to teach them, but it happens.
Sure.
And then they see it, they don't think they can do it, and they can. So it's pretty awesome.
You talked about being around people, other people with disabilities, cutting up, just being a person. I guess one thing that happens is when you're around a lot of other people with disabilities, the disability part comes away and you're just people, you're just hanging out. And so one of those realms of natural progression for young adults, for kids, that Amanda and I talked about before coming on this podcast that I thought was very interesting is your work, Amanda, in helping educate people about the need for sex education when it comes to this population, because sometimes it's almost like, oh, that's a natural part of growing up, but it doesn't apply to people with disabilities. We don't talk about that. Can you speak to your ahas and insights you've had around people's views on that?
Yeah. So I think that's a common thing that occurs. And I didn't realize how bad that was. I noticed it when I started out here in 2015 as a personal care attendant program coordinator. So I was going to the houses, um, doing the paperwork for those services to take place. And I saw it sometimes there. But when I came to Louisville office in person and I became assistant director and we started working to get into some of the schools around here, the counties and the rural areas, we gave them our curriculum, which includes sex ed, because that's important. That they have the same needs and wants that everyone wants, and I think that's normal. And I had I had directors and teachers telling me, like, we can't talk about that. The parents aren't going to be okay with that. And I'm like, that's wild, because they have this that I don't understand. I don't get why there's backlash to that personally. What good can come from not teaching that? So I struggle.
Right. Kind of like my fast four, we listed food, we listed shows, we listed books. What adolescent doesn't have that be part of the journey that they need to learn about all these changes in their body, feelings, desires, as if that wouldn't apply to people who have disabilities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about being when you first started out the program, and it made me think of a common issue that comes up on this journey, especially on the parent side or the caregiver side. And that's this put your oxygen mask on first, however you want to label it, the concept of self-care, people tending to be there exclusively for that person they're supporting, sometimes to their own detriment. Can you guys share your own insights on that, on your path, and also the clients you work with. What do you have to teach them, teach their caregivers, in some cases their parents, to learn about self-care?
Well, again, as a person with the disabilities, quadriplegic who needs assistance quite a bit. Once I get up in my chair, I'm pretty independent, but to get out of the bed and into the chair and all those issues, it's time and process, and my wife has been doing that for me for 23 years now, and so it's important for her mental health and physical health to try to get breaks and realize that she has a life outside of just taking care of me. And to me, she does work full time. And so it's imperative, I think, that those caregivers do take a break and realize that there are physical and mental repercussions to just focusing on someone else the whole time and not their own selves, and self-care, and that you can burn out real quick, and that could potentially jeopardize even a marriage or a familial relationship or whatever it might be, with you not recognizing that you as the person with the disability need to try to talk to that person, because there's sometimes a lot of parents that will do nothing but care for that individual. I know some people that are that way, and a young lady, a woman in her 40s now in a wheelchair, and then her back is giving out and she just can't do it anymore. But the parent doesn't want to relinquish those responsibilities. And what's she going to be able to do when she can't do that anymore? And that it's really going to be to the detriment of the woman who has not really explored or tried to look at any other opportunities that could help relieve this. And she's going to need this at some point in time. So it's just going to be a challenge for her, because the parent has refused to take help from anyone else. So that's going to be, unfortunately, a challenge for that person with a disability now.
Well, and that last thing you said is really key. Part of self-care, I think sometimes when people think self-care, they think breaks, which is definitely necessary. But the other part of self-care is the willingness to be able to ask for help and get help, right? And realize that getting help from other people is not a weakness, it's kind of a necessity. Amanda, you've seen a lot of different families, your consumers that you work with. Can you share any insights or stories about where you've seen this self-care dynamic playing out, or the lack of self-care?
Oh, so yeah, so I have a personal story on that actually. My dad had a significant accident in he was around like 72, 74. I don't remember the exact age, but early 70s. And he had a bad accident and he became immobile. And then on top of that, he had Alzheimer's. So those two together, we were lucky enough, our whole family, that my mother was his caregiver until he passed away. But for 7 years, she did that, 8 years. And but she didn't take a break. It was 24/7. She would not take a break. And then she did it for probably 5 years, and we finally got a system to where it sounds terrible because it doesn't, it's not enough, but we gave her an hour or 4 hours every Saturday off. So 8 to 12 or 12 to 4.
Right.
One of her kids, because she had 7 kids, would come in and relieve her. And that, I think it was important, because when she would get stressed and agitated and tired and worn out, all that, it reflected on my father. And then my father would be agitated just based on that alone. And then you add Alzheimer's onto it, I think it was significant. So you could see a huge difference once we started that, which again was too late. And we should have done it way sooner, and we should have done more, but
Yeah.
it
So what would
helped.
your message be to parents who are raising kids that are, like, let's say under 15, where they're kind of like fight or flight response? They're on deck all the time, taking care of that kid to their own, putting all their needs last. What's the risk of that?
Like not being able to provide for their needs in the future, honestly, because I think you're doing so much to keep them, well, and make sure you're providing the best that you can. But part of that is going to be taking a break. That's really important, to be able to provide what they need to them.
And also, I would say that you need to be aware of what services are available out there. And sometimes, unfortunately, you need to sign up if you have a child with a disability, you need to get them on a waiting list now because
Sure.
we've got 12 to 14,000 people on our Medicaid waiver waiting list here in Kentucky.
Right.
So, don't be afraid to look for assistance when you are in your 60s or 70s and maybe be unable to give care, to already have that in line and in process and ready to go can be very, very beneficial for the whole family, but particularly the one with the disability. So if there's not a big disruption in the way that they're living their life. So don't be afraid to ask for help and don't look for those uh, assistance programs that might be able to help that person tremendously later in life.
If somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, I get all this, Jim, I get the concept, but I don't know where to start. What advice, maybe start with you, Amanda, would you have for people to like dip their toe in the waters of self-care? Like, where could they start if right now they're just doing everything and they never think of themselves?
I think if you look up a caregiver support group in your area, it's really important, and they have a lot of resources to give out. Those are usually, if you Google it, you can find one near you. And I think and sometimes they're virtual, sometimes they're in person, but I think that's a really good place to start. And independent living centers, that's just because that's what we do and we know it. I think they always can help you find those resources too near you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, we haven't had a chance. You talked about a little bit that you'd expand on some of your services for folks that are just learning about you guys. Tell us again the name of your organization, the work you do, and some of your primary services.
Yeah, so Center for Accessible Living, we're an independent living disability rights and resource center. We provide 5 core services. That's primary, information and referral. So you can call with a question, anyone with disability or not, and we will give you an answer as far as if it's has to do with a resource that we can look up for you. It can be across the country, it can be anywhere, we'll find it. We'll do our best to find it. Let me say that. We'll do our best to find it and we'll get it for you. We might have to call you back, but we'll get it. Peer support, which is so at least 51% of our staff is mandated federally to have a disability. Our numbers are much higher than that. So peer support is a group that's led by a person with a disability that can, we can go in there and we can vent and we can talk to each other about issues. And again, it's kind of like a caregiver support group. You can give out, some advice and resources, and it works really well. And we have a couple of those that meet monthly. But they're different at each office, and it usually depends on the need there. Advocacy, which is what David does. That's one of our main ones. The one that I think is very important is because we do systems advocacy, which is on a greater level. And David speaks better about this than me, probably. He's probably cringing. And then individual advocacy, which is just, advocating for what you need and what you to be successful and independent. Independent living skills, which I love. It's where we go in and someone comes into us and they say, hey, I want to, like I said before, everybody's independence is different. So, hey, I want to be able to do my own checking account. I still live with my parents, but I want to be able to do my own checking account. We sit down with them, we work a budget, we provide them the resources to be able to do that, and we help them learn that skill. So they're in the driver's seat though. We just help them out with it. And then transition services, which is another one. Kids transitioning out of high school to their, to postgraduate work, whatever it is, post graduating high school work. And then where it can be, if they want to move out on their own, again, independent living stuff. Or we can help them find housing and things. Or if someone is in an institution, nursing home, anything like that, and they want to get out of that, we work with them to provide those services and find those services as well.
That was a lot of stuff. It sounds
I
like
know
you've rattled off that list before. Pretty good
I
job.
say it all the time, so I'm getting better at it now.
So David, for folks that they hear the word advocacy, but they kind of don't know the day to day. Tell us a little bit about the kind of work you do in the realm of advocacy.
Well, again, it's a lot of systems advocacy where I go up to Frankfurt and advocate on behalf of people with disabilities to the General Assembly. We've tried to pass good bills that help people with disabilities and fight the bad bills that hurt people with disabilities. I serve on a lot of boards, committees, and commissions to try to make sure that the voice of the disability community is heard So I volunteer for a lot of those things. Locally, we helped create the commissions for persons with disabilities through the metro government in Louisville, and just do a lot of, and there's individual, if people have problems with parking, housing, access, can't get in a public building, we try to assist them with those issues as well. But again, we just enable and hopefully inform those individuals with disabilities or their loved ones or family members about the rights that people have with disabilities and the federal protections. But also we try to let them know that also that a lot of people, I think, particularly young people and parents, take for granted that the ADA is there and will always be there to protect you. And that's not always the case. When it first got passed, there was a lot of Supreme Court decisions that actually weakened the employment protections. And so hopefully the young people don't take that for granted, because it's only one or two Supreme Court decisions away from making the ADA less protective than what it is now. So try to inform people about what's out there and what could happen. So
Well, it sounds like we're lucky to have you fighting for us on a daily basis. So thanks for the work you do.
you're welcome, and thanks for saying that.
So Amanda, having started at the program level, assistant director, director, now you're kind of looking at the horizon for the organization. What are some of your biggest needs? What's the gap today between what you're able to do and what you want to do?
Funding. So we are funded, we get a federal grant funding, but that is just literally basic payroll just to open the doors. Any of the main things that we want to, any of the bigger things we want to do, I guess I should say, any of the extra things and the needs we see specifically in the community, that's off donations or other grants that we apply for. So I think right now housing is a huge issue in Louisville, which it's a huge issue everywhere, but we just hope any kind of donations we get, that means more people we can help. So I think with housing and transportation and all of the regular issues, that's again, advocacy and funding is what helps with that. So
Well, if folks are listening today and they're like, I like the work these folks are doing, where could they find you? Tell us your website.
yeah, www.calky.org. O-R-G. And there it tells all our services. It has all of our contact info and all of our offices and programs, and it has a donate area on there too. So if you feel so inclined, that would be awesome.
So calky.org.
Yes,
And click donate to help these folks
that's right. That's
with
right.
that funding issue. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys a little summary question, but before that, we're going to take a quick break. When you have a kid who is different, all your ducks need to be in a row, especially your money. Cam Howell with Primerica knows the joys and challenges as he and his wife raise their medically fragile son, Brooks. Cam brings over 13 years of experience to help his clients be protected, have a plan for the future, reduce debt, and connect to resources. Get your financial house in order so that you can enjoy every moment with your child. Reach out today at 502-803-5075. And now back to the show. Okay, I said we were going to do a little wrap up. If we brought you guys in as speakers to maybe a children's hospital and they had parents of kids who had maybe been in the NICU and faced some sort of challenge, they're anywhere from 6 months old to 7 years old, and they've asked you to kind of give them your big pieces of advice. And I know it's a very oversimplified question, but if you had to give them 3 keys to success, what would it be? We'll start with you, David.
My main advice would be look to people that have experienced what you've experienced. I learned so much more from my peers who were disabled. I was only injured for 2 years before I went to the University of Kentucky, and then lived in a dorm with 12 other people with disabilities. I was around 2 other people with disabilities in high school. I learned a tremendous amount from those individuals, and it helped me get to where I'm at today. So definitely look for people that have shared experiences and lived experiences to do that. Also, don't be afraid to raise your voice and make your concerns priority for your family. I wanted to blend in the background when I first became disabled. I already thought I looked different, so I didn't want to raise my voice. But then once I found out that I had protections and rights and everything, I came out of my shell quickly, and that was very empowering to me. And then again, don't be afraid to ask for assistance. I mean, it's out there. You can get it. It's there for you to take advantage of. So if it's there, just take advantage of it, and don't be afraid to really choose what you have an opportunity to take advantage of.
I love it. Thank you. Those are three really good ones. Okay, Amanda, over to you. What's your big three?
All right. So I think expectations, knowing to set the expectation level for your children high, not wildly high, but I mean knowing that they can do more than just what you can do for them. Second, you gotta laugh. And the only reason I say that is because I think we see parents that are just stressed and overwhelmed and have this detrimental feeling. And I think you gotta laugh. It's okay, and it's gonna be okay. And it's might be a tougher road, but it's gonna be all right. And then I would say knowing your rights, knowing your child's rights and the accommodations that are out there for them and not being afraid to ask for them. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, again, I love doing Charity Spotlight episodes because it focuses on some amazing people that work tirelessly every day. And I want to thank you guys both for the work you do.
Thank you.
for
Thanks for
having us.
having us.
And again, if you love this, go check them out, calky.org. We would love your help. Go to our Facebook page. Just go to seeingability.com. That'll direct you to the Facebook page. We'd like you to follow the page. Definitely, we'd love your help getting this episode out to more people. So when we post it, like this episode, leave a comment if you enjoyed it, and then share it with your network. We're also looking for ideas for future guests. Right now, we're doing 2 episodes a month. One is an individual or a family talking about their journey, and the other, like today, is a great nonprofit anywhere across the U.S. that's doing work in this space. So we would love your recommendations for future guests. And again, help share that so it gets the word out there so we can reach more parents. Our goals with this podcast are, number one, education. We hope you take something away from every episode. We all need a little bit of extra motivation and inspiration. So hopefully hearing the stories does that. And then the third is we want to be another layer of your community. We want people to listen to this podcast because there's nodding of the heads. Folks here get it. And it's just one more it can be very isolating on the journey. And so one more way to connect to other people and be one big community. So again, we know you have a lot of choices when it comes to listening. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll see everybody next time.